Welcome to an NFL Week 16 edition of the RotoWire Sports Betting Pod, a subsidiary of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Nick Whalen, John McKechnie, talking Week 16. John, we are going to go rapid fire through each of the 16 games on the slate this weekend. We got a nice balance ahead of us this weekend, right? Christmas weekend. We still got a Thursday night game. We got two games on Saturday. We got a full slate on Sunday. And then a nice three-gamer on Monday that concludes with your Ravens on the road at the 49ers.
Yes. So the NFL, for guys like us, content creators in the sports space, look, family, our hands are tied. We have to watch a lot of football this weekend. It's just how it is. Christmas Eve. Sorry, I'll put on the funny sweater, but I'm locked in on the game. Christmas night. Sorry, Grammy and Pop Up. Like the Ravens are playing. Like, what do you want me to do? Be watching too. So that's just how it is. It's nice to have the baked in excuses for this weekend, but it's looking at the slate itself. It's tough. This is a really tough nut to crack. Like, last week we scratched and clawed out a 3-2 that really, if not for the Titans kind of biffing, it should have been 4-1. The weekend prior, we were just all over everything, even the games that didn't make our card. We were nailing it. This week, boy, I'm having trouble finding even three games that I feel good about.
Yeah, so we gotta get 5 for the Circa Million card, and we'll discuss each of these, in their own context, and then talk about whether or not they'll be in consideration. I gotta say, John, a lot of our better weeks in the contest this week have come when I've not felt great about it. 2 weeks ago, I felt a little dicey about some of those picks. We pulled off a 4-1 week. For the most part, we've been keeping our heads above water. I think we've really only had 2 weeks where we've been, notably below 500, and those 2 weeks are dragging down our overall record. But we are, I believe, we're 6 games over 500 heading into Week 16. So, it's going to take a miracle, I think, for us to have a chance at the top prize, but still very much in it for the quarterly prizes. And that's something that I love about the Circa contest is, if you start slow, there's always quarter 2, there's quarter 3, there's quarter 4 where there's money to be made. But yeah, it's been so much fun playing in that, and we will kind of discuss that as we go through each game. Let's start with Thursday Night Football tonight. We are recording a little bit earlier than normal due to the holiday, so we can get some words in on Saints-Rams. This number locked at 3.5 in the Circa contest. That's down from where it was earlier in the week. Maybe a little bit of support coming in for New Orleans. I have not really been a truster of the New Orleans Saints all season. I think Derek Carr played arguably his best game of the year last week against the Giants, so maybe that doesn't mean all that much. But I actually thought that was going to be a tricky spot for New Orleans. I would not have been surprised if they stumbled against the Giants. So, it feels like in some ways they're maybe finding a way to play more consistently. But at the same time, I think this Rams team, even though they allowed Washington to come back and make that a little bit uncomfortable at the end last week, they to me feel like a team that has been much better than a 7-7 outfit so far.
Right. So this game is really high stakes, right? Because they're both 7-7. The winner will have the head-to-head tiebreaker. But I do like the Rams in this spot. It's a very public opinion, but the New Orleans generally has been bad against the number this year. One of the worst teams against the spread, period. They've been bad against the spread on the road. Rams have been slightly above average, I think 4-3 at home against the spread this season. Stafford's healthy, playing well. I think he's like a top 10 fantasy quarterback this week. You got Nakua, you've got Kupp, you've got Kyren Williams. He's just making me eat my words every single week. The defense is somehow cobbling it together. So all of that, plus the Saints being as confounding as they are, they can have games like the one in Indianapolis or New England where they just kind of come out of nowhere and light up the scoreboard, but they haven't really done that against NFC opponents for the most part. They haven't really beaten any quality teams so far this year. I think that trend continues. I think the Rams do get this done.
Saints are 4-10-1 ATS. In their last 15 spots when they're attempting to cover for a second consecutive week. That's something to keep in mind. This has not been a good team against the number for the most part this season and in years past. And I think against a good team, that's when we start to see the true New Orleans Saints come out. And that's Derek Carr throwing red zone picks. That's drives, stalling on just 3rd and 8 after 3rd and 8. the Saints should get Chris Olave back. In fact, he's off the injury report. He is confirmed to play this week. That is big. They're getting a little bit healthier on offense. Still no Michael Thomas, but you got Alvin Kamara, you got Jamal Williams. However, they will be without their right tackle, Ryan Ramczyk. I would say arguably their best offensive lineman. You said it perfectly with the Rams. They're cobbling this defense together. Like, that's what worries me is I still don't believe this is a reliable week-to-week defense. But I think if the Rams could get to 23, 26 points, they're going to cruise here.
Yeah, I like them. I like them here. I think that the offense sets up well against the Saints defense. Maybe the run game doesn't get going quite as well for the Rams as we've seen in recent weeks, but I think the passing game more than makes up for it in this spot. I think that this ends up being a nice game from the Rams passing attack as they go on to a victory and continue to kind of make themselves primed for a playoff spot in the wild card. Whereas the Saints, they're just going to have to hope that the Bucs slip up and they can still the division could still be in grasp for them.
Saints have allowed 100-plus rushing yards in 8 of their last 9 games, including 200-plus to the Falcons and the Carolina Panthers in 2 of their last 4 games. So I think this might be a decent spot for Kyren Williams and the Rams to keep it going. And the nice thing about the Rams now is, like, if that running game stalls, Matthew Stafford is rolling. He's rolling with Cooper Kupp. He's rolling with Puka Nacua. And I think we're kind of seeing now, really for the first prolonged stretch of the season, what this offense can look like when they're at full strength and fully healthy. So I'm with you. I like the Rams -3.5 at home tonight. Let's go to the December 23rd, the Saturday slate, John. We got a couple of games coming at us on Saturday. Bengals-Steelers, big one in the AFC North. This feels like a kitchen sink. You're probably throwing the dishwasher, the fridge, any really kitchen appliances are on the table here for Pittsburgh. I mean, their season's on the line. You could say the same for Cincinnati. They need to keep winning, but they're in a better spot right now than the Steelers. And the big feather in the cap for the Bengals, who will not have Jamar Chase, is that they're not starting Mason Rudolph.
They are not. That's an issue for the Steelers, but at least the Steelers can say they're not starting Mitchell Trubisky anymore. I mean, that's something.
Fair point. Accurate point, yes. But
last week was kind of the put up or shut up time for them. And they got out to the hot start and it's like, is this really the continuation of the narrative that, like the Steelers as underdogs, that's when you jump in on them. It felt like that they had really kind of stacked the chips against themselves by losing straight up to the Patriots and the Cardinals respectively at home in those previous 2 games. I think the Steelers are just cooked. And the Bengals just need to win this one by 2 points, and grit and hard hat and all the other little stupid Steelers tropes need not apply here. I think even the Jamar Chase-less, Joe Burrow-less Bengals, that's more gritty and hard hat, in my opinion, than anything the Steelers have to do here. And I think that the Bengals go in, get it done, and the Yinzers go home sad on Christmas.
Steelers are on cooked watch. You're right. I feel that way too. I think they're officially cooked for the season if they lose this game. We got to mention all the Tomlin stats though, John. I mean, this would be a classic Mike Tomlin somehow find a way to win this game scenario for Pittsburgh. After allowing 30 points under Mike Tomlin, the Steelers are 26-10-1 against the number in their next game. They are 43-28-1 against the spread under Mike Tomlin after failing to cover by at least 7 points in their previous game. They're 19-6-1 ATS at home after allowing 30-plus points. And off of a double-digit loss, they are 22-12 against the spread. So there's all these pro-Tomlin numbers. How many of those games came with Mason Rudolph, right? I'm with you, man. This team has felt cooked. I think George Pickens he was the first one on this. Halfway through week 1, George Pickens knew this team was cooked.
Yes, man. And Tomlin has all these amazing stats, but I think we're going to have to reframe them to resplit them. Ben Roethlisberger era, Tomlin, and post. From 2021 onward, I think is where we need to make our judgment calls on Tomlin's coaching gravitas, because I mean with the Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, Mitchell Trubisky clown show, it probably isn't quite as strong, or it's harder to trust those numbers because it's not peak Ben Roethlisberger back there kind of helping smooth things over. So they're in deep trouble. I can't believe George Pickens said the quiet part out loud. I know that he has the dog in him generally, but clearly didn't last week. Demonte KZ had too much dog in him. Therefore, we're not seeing him the rest of the season. Yeah, I'm out on the Steelers. I think the Tomlin mystique, the Steelers mystique, like Ben Roethlisberger said himself, it's over.
All right, let's go to Bills-Chargers. Just a banger of a game in the late window on Saturday. Bills are 12-point favorites right now at the DK Sportsbook. This one locked at 12.5 in Circa. Not a big difference with the hook in this situation. 13 versus 13.5. Maybe that's something I would consider. 12.5 versus 13. I love the Bills here. Call me a sucker. Call me a square. Tell me I'm reading too much into last week's results. I don't think there is any post-Staley firing bounce coming from the Chargers. I think if they were healthy, maybe, they're freed from the shackles of Brandon Staley. Like, I think this would be normally an obvious spot where you should get an improvement because Brandon Staley is a terrible coach, and this should have happened probably earlier in the season, if not after last season. But I don't think they're capable of that bounce with Easton Stick. And, we don't even know if Keenan Allen's going to be back in the mix. I'm not sure that really matters. I mean, this offensive line was a disaster last week. Austin Eckler has looked like a shell of himself really since coming back from that early season injury. And, the Bills, they beat the Cowboys by 3 scores last week, and Josh Allen went 7 of 15 passing. I mean, they have unlocked something running the ball, and Lord knows you can run on the LA Chargers. And look, if for whatever reason James Cook can't get it going this week, then great. You got Josh Allen. You got Stephon Diggs to fall back on. You got Dalton Kincaid. I actually think this could be, a sneaky breakout spot for Gabe Davis, who's been, just a disaster these last 2 weeks. I don't think this number's high enough. I know the Bills are on the road. I know they're going out west, but this is also the easiest road stadium in the league to play at.
Oh, easily. I mean, if not for your holiday plans, like if you're a Buffalo fan, like go to LA. Like what, this time of year, get out of the cold for a little bit and go see your team just completely steamroll the Chargers, in nice conditions. Do that. I'm completely with you there. You drew it up well. I think the Bills are rolling right now, and whatever the antithesis of rolling is, that's what the Chargers are doing. And I think that continues this week. And again, it's a friendly number that we're playing around with at Circa with it being 12.5 points. And, I'd feel comfortable with them all the way to 13.5. Really not a whole lot else to say. I think, that it's hard to have a line that's big enough for me to bet the Chargers here.
Yeah, again, I know there are some bounce back narratives here, but I don't think the Chargers are a normal team in that scenario. No. They don't have their quarterback. They don't have their top receiver. It's just their season's cooked. They've known it was cooked, and I know I saw a lot of people this week saying, "Oh, they gave up against the Raiders." Like, I don't think they gave up. I don't think teams you can't really do that in the NFL, or you're just going to get like pounded physically and get injured. Like, they didn't give up, but it was a game that completely got away from them. Everything that went wrong, possibly went wrong for them. I completely butchered that, but you know what I mean? And it's Easton Stick, so I don't think there's any, big bounce back coming here against the Bills. There's going to be zero energy in that building. If anything, it'll be a massively pro Bills crowd, you would think, on a holiday weekend. So yeah, I like that one for the Circa card. Bills minus 12.5. Confounding game in Atlanta, John, to kick off our Christmas Eve slate. The Colts and the Falcons, two of the most unpredictable teams in the league, at least in Indianapolis, to me, as far as variance goes. I mean, they're at the top of the league. You have no idea what you're getting week to week from the Colts. I would say there's variance with Atlanta, but I don't know if there really is. I mean, we kind of know who they are. And, in retrospect, losing that game straight up to Carolina, it was surprising. I was on the Falcons, but the way you watched it play out, you're like, yeah, this is kind of what the Falcons do.
Yep. I was watching the game with a sort of like a dual citizen, half Falcons, half Jags fan. And I pointed out to him during the game, like, "Hey, Falcons are up," and he just goes, "They're gonna find a way to lose." And this is against the Panthers, mind you. And the
Carolina Panthers.
There was nobody even at that game. Like, that was insane. Like the visuals from that game were unbelievable. The vibes all time bad. The Falcons have gone away from Desmond Ridder to Taylor Heineke. We talked about this on our Circa video earlier, but it's like, yeah, we were making the calls we had the Heineke signal out earlier this season when they finally made that move to him. Didn't go well. So I'm not sure that I have the same type of optimism and enthusiasm that things get better under Heineke that I did earlier this season. But at the same time, like if you were making your personal lines for this game coming into this week on Monday, would you have said that the Falcons were favored whatsoever? Or there's no multi-part to it. Maybe even just, do you have anything under the Indianapolis favored by a field goal? And all of a sudden it's actually the Falcons are the favorites in this one. And Indianapolis has been pretty killer on the road against the spread. I believe they're 5-2 against the spread, one of the better marks in the league, other than the Bucs, who are the true road warriors, 7-1 against the spread. Good on them. But yeah, I have this game officially breaks my brain, I think, is what I'm getting at.
The Colts were 2.5-point favorites 2 days ago at DraftKings, and we've seen that line move considerably toward Atlanta. And I can't get there with the Falcons, man. I don't know how you could believe in this team. And to me, Ritter to Heineke is probably a lateral move. I don't really know how you can upgrade Atlanta. I think earlier in the season, I upgraded them when they went away from Ritter, and expected Heineke to look better. And I still think on balance he's probably the better option of the two. But he brings that Minshew-y level of friskiness, and it was mostly negative. In the games that he played, they went 0-3 when he played significant time, and 2 of those were starts. So I'm staying away from this one. I don't like it. I think the market and the numbers maybe pushing us a little bit toward Atlanta here. My lean would be Indy, but I feel like I'm split on that enough that I don't want to put it on the card.
No, I don't either. And looking at the splits from the public, 60% agrees that the Falcons should be favored here as far as the money is concerned, coming in with the Falcons as 1 point favored, 60% over at DraftKings. So that's the public seems to believe for one reason or the other. But I just can't get there. I expect Indianapolis to win this one outright. Yep. But there's just something far enough awry here where it's like it just is signal to leave it alone. Sort of like the Texans Jets game from a couple weeks ago. It's like, I don't get this. Therefore, I'm scared of it. Therefore, I'm leaving it alone.
I've gotten to the point in my weekly article where I put a disclaimer in for every Falcons game. I'm like, do not trust me. Whatever I pick, just take the opposite. You'd be like 12-2 on the year picking Falcons games. I fade myself when it comes to the Falcons. When I think they're going to win, they don't win. When I think they're going to lose, they find a way to win. So, this tells me that we just need to stay far away. So we will agree on that one. Jonathan Taylor, by the way, should be back in the mix for the Colts. We're waiting to hear a status update on Michael Pittman, who took that hard hit over the middle from Devontae Casey last week. Packers-Panthers. 4.5-point dogs at home for the Packers. That's where this one locked at the Circa Sportsbook. I still think Green Bay is a better team. They have not shown it the last 2 weeks. I think it was alarmingly bad on defense last week. They've been a disaster on defense for 3+ years now. Anybody who watches this team, I mean, the calls for Joe Barry's head are not new. This should have probably happened 2 years ago. I think they're going to fire him at the end of the year. The question is that somewhat of a wake-up call, right? Like, it was so bad that you have to change something, right? And Matt LaFleur has been, in my mind, overly diplomatic about this. He has defended Joe Barry to a degree that I don't think he has to. But, he basically said this week, like, I got to have more of a hand in our defensive calls. Like, we can't have guys playing 15 yards off when it's 3rd and 3 and you're just handing Chris Godwin, his 8th 10-yard catch of the day. There's no reason to make Baker Mayfield look the way he looked last week. He was 10 of 11 on passes that traveled at least 10 yards. That's not who Baker Mayfield is. That's not who he's ever been. But, you have the benefit now facing Bryce Young, who has not thrown for 200 yards in like 10 weeks, right? So it should be a matchup where even if you're still really concerned about the Packers defense, which you should be, doesn't matter against Carolina. If you could just, mildly slow down Chuba Hubbard and that like high volume running game, I like the spot for Green Bay. But again, this is another team that has a ton of injuries on offense.
It's right. The Packers do, or they are banged up. You were making the point during your breakdown of Week 15 on the pod with Adam earlier this week. Great pod, by the way. Like the Packers do what they always do with Aaron Jones. They have the early usage that's encouraging, and then he suddenly disappears from the game plan. So that was a frustrating element. And then, yes, I mean, anytime that you see your coordinator trending on Twitter, it's never for a good reason.
Yes.
And
he called another great game. Let's get him trending.
Yeah, let's go. Pat on the back. Cheers all around, Mr. Barry. No, that's not how that works. And yeah, Joe, I only know of Joe Barry just because of the Packers fans absolutely despise the guy. I'm still of the belief that the Panthers are the worst team. The Falcons just found a way in a divisional setup to blow it last week. The Packers know their backs are against the wall. I know the last 2 weeks have been really tough, but I think that kind of leads to this being a somewhat playable number for our purposes. And I know it's on the road and everything, and that's not as ideal, but I think the Packers can get this done. I don't think that last week was a signal that the Panthers have figured anything out. This is just 4.5 points. So, we just got to avoid the dreaded 21-17 results here, but I would take the Packers.
Yeah, I thought the Packers actually played a pretty good game offensively last week against Tampa, right? I mean, despite getting away from Aaron Jones, as they always do, they finished with fewer than 100 rushing yards, which, Tampa, I think you think of as a good run defense, and they are, and especially when Vita Vea is in there. But I thought Green Bay got, obviously they fell behind and they were trying to go score for score with Tampa, but I thought Jordan Love played pretty well, all things considered. And, if the defense could have just gotten like one stop at any point in the second half, I think that maybe becomes a different game. I am worried about the Chuba Hubbard factor. I don't think Carolina needs to ask Bryce Young to throw the ball 40 times to hang around with Green Bay. But again, the biggest hang up for me is the injuries. Like I don't think Christian Watson's playing. He did not practice at all today. Jaden Reed did not practice at all today either. That would be a huge, huge swing piece for me with Green Bay, because if you're taking Watson and Reed out of the equation, Aaron Jones is banged up again, by the way, is dealing with knee and finger injuries. Dontavian Wicks, who's given them some pretty good snaps this season, he's been limited all week. Like if you go into this game with a limited Aaron Jones, potentially no AJ Dillon, no Watson, no Reed, and your receiving core is like Romeo Doubs, Malik Heath, Samari Toure, and then Tucker Kraft at tight end, like at that point, I think I might take Green Bay to win, but I might take the Panthers to cover the 4.5. And this game's in Carolina for what it's worth. Not sure that really matters all that much. We saw a hell of a crowd in Charlotte last week, but I don't know if I can quite get there with the Packers. But are you comfortable enough with Green Bay that this would be a consideration for the Circa card?
I am, and even with those injuries, I still think 4.5 is not enough for me to be that concerned. But my favorite tweet from this week is from the Onion, actually. When they do a little foray into sports, it's usually pretty funny. The James Webb Telescope finds evidence of Packers secondary lined up 20 million light years off of receivers, and then it's just like a picture of number 37 on the Packers just floating in space.
Yeah, that's the thing with the Onion. It's like, especially if that's a pretty niche sports tweet as far as the Onion goes. They'll dabble in sports, of course, but that's how things are really bad. Like if the Onion is making a niche joke about how far off your secondary is playing, like enough that they're like, yes, our broad audience will understand this. I mean, that's about as big of a death knell as it gets for Joe Barry. So there we have it. We're a little bit split on this one. I think we agree the Packers are winning. I don't know if they do it by more than a field goal. Browns-Texans. This is a fun one. I know we both like the Browns here at 2.5. Eerily similar situation to what we faced last week with the Houston Texans, because I think they're going to be down most of their key pieces, again, just as they were in Tennessee last week. They found a way to win that game after going down by 2 scores. I don't think they'll have the same luck against the Browns. I know the Browns defense has not traveled quite as well on the road this season. They've been so much better at home. But if you watched that entire Houston-Tennessee game, as I did, because I had a lot riding on the Houston Texans losing that game, credit to Case Keenum, credit to Devin Singletary, credit to DeMeco Ryans, who in my mind should be coach of the year for finding a way to win that game. I mean, that's in that situation, man, young team, down so many key players, down CJ Stroud. You almost never see a straight up win like that. That was Tennessee just handing them that game. The Titans had so many chances. There were like 3 separate drives where it's like, all right, if they just get one more first down, they'll run this thing down to the point where Houston won't have much time left. And Tennessee was just an abomination, just on both ends, really, but especially offensively. And, the Browns are turnover prone. That's what worries me, right? Joe Flacco, as much as he's rejuvenated this offense in this passing game, and David Njoku and Amari Cooper, he's still tossing 2 or 3 picks a week, right? And if Derek Stingley could get his hands on a couple of them, maybe that keeps Houston around. But at 2.5 in the Circa contest, I think we got to put the Browns on the card.
I do too. This is one of the very few games that I do feel good about right off the jump this week. I think the Browns, the key will be their defense showing up. It should be able to against an offense led by one Case Keenum that obviously isn't going to have to worry about Tank Dell. Is not going to have to deal with a fully healthy Nico Collins. I think they're going to be able to slow down Devin Singletary. I think that there will be more of like them being able to force Keenum to make them beat them than the Titans were able to manufacture last week. So this all just points to the Browns. Again, of course, in the world of NFL betting, the better you feel about it, the worse it's going to go for you. But for better or for worse, I'm on the Browns too.
Yeah, I think we just got to trust it here. This is, for me, part of it is just thinking the Browns are the better team. I mean, they have a chance to actually clinch a playoff spot. Now, they're going to need some help this week, but obviously a win here goes a long way. Then you're basically one win away from essentially locking yourself in. If they can get to 11 wins, they're making the playoffs in the AFC. So, motivationally, obviously both of these teams need this game, but I don't think this is really a letdown spot for Cleveland. And I think if the Browns could just play it safe, not turn it over 3 times, I don't see Case Keenum doing this 2 weeks in a row, right? And I also don't think Case Keenum is the reason they won. It's not like he played this great game. This is not some like Jake Browning situation where it's like, oh my goodness, maybe they could find a way with Case Keenum. It's like you just played a hapless Tennessee team that could not protect its quarterback and could not get anything going when all it needed was one more drive, basically to close out that game at any point in the second half. So I just have significantly more faith in the Browns as an overall team than I do the Tennessee Titans. And I think it's a lot to ask for this version of an extremely banged up Texans team to pull that off 2 weeks in a row, even at home. I think this is a good home crowd. I mean, I think it is a kind of rejuvenated football city with the amount of progress that they've made over the last few months. But I like the Browns here. If this was 3.5, maybe not, but at 2.5, it's a little too juicy. Seahawks-Titans, another Christmas Eve game in the noon window. Seahawks 2.5 point favorites. That's where it locks in Circa. We will see. I think we could see some more movement before we get to Sunday, but this is an interesting one here. I mean, I just dumped on Tennessee for like 5 minutes, so I don't know how I'd rightfully now turn around and back them. But I think if they're starting Ryan Tannehill, to me, that is not a downgrade.
It's probably about level. We discussed this a little bit on the first one. Especially when it's a hobbled Levis versus Ryan Tannehill, it's probably fine. As far as the Titans are concerned, your expectations are about the same. You worry that Derrick Henry, the cliff has come for him. I think that's a fair concern. Last week, didn't he have fewer than 1 yard per carry, if I remember correctly? So, I mean, that's it's a tough look for the guy. You're a little bit concerned about that being a factor for Tennessee, their ability to move the ball. But I think that this is just, I always keep an eye on this, especially when an underdog wins on Monday Night Football, how they perform the next week, because there's always more eyes on that game and a little bit more as far as like public enthusiasm, like, oh, maybe these guys are pretty good actually. So that seems to apply to the Seahawks this week with 90% basically of the action coming in on them. The Titans being as good as they are against the spread at home, I'm inclined to side with the Titans here. I just don't know if it's strong enough to include on the card necessarily. But again, tough slate this week. Might slide in as our 5th pick. But if you're in strong disagreement, then we'll move on to something else. I think we got you on mute there, sir.
I wouldn't say I'm in strong disagreement, but I don't like the number. You're basically asking Tennessee to win that game outright, in my mind. Otherwise, you're threading a very narrow needle with needing them to lose by 1 or 2. So I don't know. I mean, I think we see some more line movement later in the week once we get a better update on Geno Smith, who, by the way, I think is going to be back. I mean, he practiced in full yesterday, so chances are he's back in the mix. Kenneth Walker's banged up. That's something that we need to keep an eye on. Picked up a shoulder injury on Monday night against Philly. Underdogs, by the way, have won straight up in 7 straight Monday night games. So this is not really a recent trend. I mean, it's something that's been going on for a few weeks now. I think if you look at these teams objectively, I think Seattle's the much better team. I think, they may have thrown us off their scent a little bit, losing 4 straight, but do you really fault them for losing 4 straight to the Rams, the Niners, the Cowboys, and the Niners again?
No, that was a brutal stretch.
Yeah. So again, going on the road, Tennessee, like you said, has been better at home. They're certainly a live dead team. It's like I don't think you expect the Titans to just lay down here. With Mike Vrabel, that's just not really the way he's wired. So I'd be surprised if the Seahawks win this game handily, but I got to say I don't love the Titans side of this.
Okay, all right. That I needed some sense knocked into me there because it just felt like that my doubts about the Seahawks getting blown up the way that they did on Monday night with them being able to beat the Eagles, and now I'm projecting them onto the Eagles as a result. A real it follows type of situation. I needed some sense knocked into me because saying the words "I like the Titans this week" always feels bad.
Jeffrey Simmons, by the way, not sure if he's going to play. He has not practiced at all this week. Obviously, didn't play last week, and goes without saying that would be a huge loss, especially if Kenneth Walker ends up playing. All right, let's see if we can do this game in like 8 seconds. Commanders-Jets, John. Jets are 3-point favorites at home. In my article this week, I labeled this not only the stay away of the week, but the Nick Whalen stay away of the year.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't bet this game if you don't absolutely have to. Just don't. There's a lot of other games to choose from this week, but if I had to pick one, it would be the Jets, just because the Washington defense is in fact that bad, and I think that the Washington offense could have a lot of turnovers here.
Yeah, this is a call the gambling hotline number if you end up investing in this game. If you bet more than $100 on this game, talk to somebody. All right, you might have a problem.
Anybody.
And look, it does. Yeah, it could be literally anybody. Just call the number. There's a bunch of numbers out there. Go to the website, whatever it might be. I'm inclined to just take the Commanders because they're getting points. I don't care how many points. This is such a wacky, two very different teams, but also even teams to me in some ways. Like Washington is horrendous on defense. I mean, they are neck and neck with the Cardinals, just battling week to week who can have the worst defense in the NFL. But they're also way better to me on offense than the Jets are. And their offense hasn't even been that good, Washington's, for 5 straight weeks. But it's still vastly better than what the Jets are throwing out there. And, of course, the Jets have the big advantage on defense. So you have two just very contrasting opponents. I have no idea what's going to happen. In a situation like this, I tend to trust the team that I think can score 2 or 3 touchdowns. And I know as bad as the Washington defense is, maybe this is a week where the Jets can do that. But I think the Washington offense to me is more sustainable.
It's more sustainable, but it's more volatile in the sense that it could have the meltdown turnover game. Maybe I think that the Jets defense is a little bit overrated, but it's still quite good. And them being at home, I'll go with it. I do tend to have a similar side to you where it's these are 2 crap teams. Who's getting the points is the direction you go in. That's usually can serve you pretty well, but I think Washington falls just enough below the threshold comparatively to the Jets here. So I'll side with the Jets. And I think Saleh needs this game to keep his job.
Fair. And it is in New York too, or New Jersey technically. So maybe that's a slight edge for whatever it's worth to the Jets. All right. A much better game. Lions-Vikings in the NFC North. This line to me is a little surprising. Lions by 3. I think this could be a little bit higher, but pretty strong sentiment in support of the Minnesota defense. That's what you hear and read about this game is, man, this could be a nightmare matchup for Jared Goff. We know about him on the road. He is in a dome, so I'm not really worried about the conditions. Obviously, I think this should be a decent spot for him if you remove the elements. But Jared Goff versus a Brian Flores defense, I think is the big concern here. I still favor Detroit. I think at 3, I'm comfortable with the Lions. I think they're a much better team. I think in this whole discussion, we tend to forget that the Vikings are starting Nick Mullins. They're on their 3rd quarterback, and so many teams are in that situation that it's almost kind of ancillary, right? But at the end of the day, you have a basically fully healthy Detroit Lions team against a Vikings team on its 3rd quarterback. And I don't want to oversimplify it, but I don't really love this spot for Minnesota. I think they played Cincinnati about as well as they could last week. I thought Nick Mullins could have thrown 3 more interceptions than he did. And I know the Detroit defense has slipped the last couple of weeks. Felt like they got back on track to some degree last week against Denver. But I think as long as the Lions don't commit more than 2 turnovers in this game, they will win and they will cover, because I think they can, even if it ends up being a semi-rough day for Jared Goff, their running game to me, it doesn't matter who the defense is. They've been so consistent. The thunder and lightning, if you will, to harken back to the days of Ron Dane and Tiki Barber. That approach, man, not many teams have an answer for it. Even when they've gone up against some of the better defenses, some of the better run defenses in the league, teams have a hard time stopping that.
They do. There's just so many ways in which the Lions can hurt you. Sam Laporta is such a stud, and I think that Mullins probably can't really sting that Lions defense. Like the Lions kind of they can get beat pretty badly in January by some of the more competent offenses, but this one I think falls below that threshold. Get it. This just being 3 points, it's really gettable. It's almost too tempting. But at the same time, like the public is very split on how to approach this game with the Lions just getting 52% of the money coming in on this. So it doesn't feel like a totally square side to be liking the Lions here. Generally, I'm someone that doubts the Lions, and I know on the road that tends to be a fair assessment of them. Give me the Lions here. I think at the end of the day, this is Nick Mullins.
Yeah, the Lions, since their first game before the bye, so week 8, 222 rushing yards against the Raiders. After the bye, 200 on LA, 115, 140, 142, 140, 185. I mean, they faced a variety of defenses, some good and some bad during that span. And I think they always have that to fall back on. What I will say against Detroit is that this is a team that when things are not going their way, they tend to snowball. They tend to panic. Mm-hmm. They tend to start, forcing things on third downs and going for fourth downs that they probably shouldn't. So if this game starts like last week for Minnesota, where they come out hot and they're up, 14-3 or something early on, I don't always trust the Lions to rally back in those scenarios. But I think as long as they can avoid a disaster start, I think they'll be fine here. The Ty Chandler factor, his emergence the last couple of weeks, does that really do anything to move the needle for you?
No. I mean, it just means that the Vikings have a functional run game that you have to account for, but it's not something that's like, they got a game breaker over there now. This is not like peak Dalvin Cook.
All right, Jaguars-Bucs. Could be an interesting game for some. Others will be in a full-on panic watching this game, such as myself, as the Jags watch their division lead slip away over these last couple of weeks. This will be a streaming the game in church situation for me, as I will be forced against my will into a Christmas Eve mass. I myself am not Catholic, but my wonderful wife and her family are. So I'm already, I'm looking into can I get one of like a Bible or like a hymnal book and maybe hollow it out, like back in like a National Treasure, and you like have a key hidden in a book. Like, can I just get my phone in there so it's not obvious that I'm streaming it? Can I get my AirPods somehow into church? We'll see. But I'm nervous for this game, man. It's a pick'em at Circa, but if you look at the great odds comparison page that we have over at RotoWire and go over to our betting section, you will see the Buccaneers favored by 2 at the DraftKings Sportsbook, and you'll even see some 2.5s out there.
That is that. I think, pending the Trevor Lawrence status, I think that might be a hair too much confidence in the Buccaneers. I think the Buccaneers tend to be, we say it all year long with Todd Bowles when he's an underdog. There's a reason he's an underdog. Never really seems to work out for him. Last week being the big exception. But I'm not sure if that marks a total sea change in how we view the Buccaneers. I think that the Jags are still the better team overall. They're clunky. They're frustrating, of course, as you're keenly aware. But if Trevor Lawrence is in there, I think the Jags with points is the way to go this time.
If Trevor Lawrence is in there and you're getting this at, Jags plus 2.5, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the play. I think these are actually more evenly matched teams, though, than a lot of people realize. I mean, this version of the Jaguars, not the first 11 weeks of the season. Like they're a disaster right now. They cannot get out of their own way. That's been something that's plagued them really all year, and they had the talent and the schedule to survive it early on. But this is a team that struggles with turnovers, struggles with holding on to the ball. I don't think they're going to have Zay Jones this week. He's not practiced at all. And if you watched last week against Baltimore, he was kind of dragging that leg around, didn't really look like himself. Really since Christian Kirk went down, Zay Jones and Calvin Ridley, those are the guys that need to step up. I thought Ridley played a decent game against Baltimore, but it still just doesn't really look like he has that true, wide receiver 1 type of ability, especially because like the bar right now to be like an elite wide receiver 1 in the NFL is very high. I mean, there are 5, 6, 7 guys who I think you could put in that category when they're healthy. And Calvin Ridley is just not close to that level right now. So we're looking at a world where, putting Lawrence aside, look, and if Trevor Lawrence is out, pound the Buccaneers. The Jaguars are not winning this game with CJ Beathard, especially because they have no running game to speak of to fall back on. And that's still a problem even if Lawrence plays. But you take Zay Jones out of the equation, and you could be going into this game with Calvin Ridley, Parker Washington, Jamal Agnew, and Tim Jones as your wide receivers. And again, the Jags will not be able to run the ball. So those are the guys you're relying on to beat this Buccaneers team on the road.
Yeah, that's a uninspired skill position group. Again, Trevor Lawrence is the key factor here. So keep an eye on the Friday injury report. But if Lawrence is out, like you said, and maybe the suggestion right now with the action being different between some books and there being some variance, maybe there is a real possibility that Lawrence is out for this one, which would kill a lot of my best ball teams that are still alive. So really hoping that is not the case. But beyond that, I'm going to stick with the Jags one more time.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe it's my inner fan speaking, but I don't feel good about this one. And we got to give it an incomplete grade right now. I can't confidently give out a side right now, not knowing Trevor Lawrence's status. But I do think that line movement, toward Tampa Bay, is perhaps a reaction to Trevor Lawrence remaining in concussion protocol as of today. So we might not really get an answer on him for a couple more days. And again, if he's out, take the Buccaneers. Cardinals-Bears. I'm actually looking forward to this game, John. As far as meaningless late season games with nothing on the line go, I think this is going to be a really fun one.
I know, right? I mean, these are two teams jockeying for draft position a little bit. Two situations in which the quarterbacks, we don't know if like they're auditioning for to their teams to keep them in these respective instances. I don't know what the Bears are going to do with the Fields. I would not want to be the guy that makes that call one way or the other. I think it's probably more likely that the Cardinals continue to stick with Kyler Murray, and they're not going to be drafting maybe quite high enough to get there. But if they lose again this weekend, maybe they are in like the Drake May type of sweepstakes. I hate the idea of backing Kyler Murray in cold weather. I don't really have a ton of evidence to point me against it necessarily, but I feel like he's going to look even smaller and more miserable in Chicago. I like the Bears here.
I trust the Bears defense. Not something I thought I would say
good
this season. The Bears defense is good. It's good. And we did just see Arizona, run all over the 49ers. That was kind of the one thing they had going last week. And we'll see how translatable that is. The Bears have been especially good against the run. And, I think Montez Sweat has, kind of upped their potential overall as a defense. Yeah, I don't know how much he's really factoring into the run game, but the running game, or stopping the running game, has been something they've been able to do, even early in the year before they made that change and before Justin Fields, came back at the Tyson Bagent era, if you remember that. The question is, do we trust Chicago to cover 4 here? I like Chicago to win this game, but as you pointed out at the top of the pod, trying to sweat out Chicago with a lead late in the game, terrifying. Awful play calling.
Awful.
So many drives that stalled over and over. Justin Fields, getting tackled by somebody just like tapping him on the back of the foot when he was running for what would have been a clear first down. Not to ice the game, but one that would have gone a long way towards Chicago winning that one. I like the Bears to win this game. I don't know if they can get out of their own way and do it by more than a field goal.
Definitely fair. Definitely a fair sentiment. I'm just betting that this time around, the weaknesses on that Cardinals defense are the worst kind of weaknesses to have against an offense like the Bears, and therefore the Bears are able to extend those drives, kill the clock, and end up winning this one by a touchdown. All
right, there we go. I'm on the Bears as well. Patriots-Broncos. Patriots are 6-point favorites at home. Or no, they're not. The Broncos are 6-point favorites at home. God, no, are the Patriots favored. 6.5 is the number at DraftKings, locked at 6 in the Circa contest. Hard not to side with Denver here. Obviously, New England has put up a fight the last couple of weeks, got that win over Pittsburgh. I actually thought they played reasonably well. We're in that game for like 3 quarters against Kansas City. Yeah. I also thought the Chiefs very much took their foot off the gas in the second half. Could have tacked on another score at the end if they wanted to. They did the really insulting take a knee on 4th down with time left to give the ball back to the Patriots up 10 last week. It's just really tough to judge, what it means, playing against Kansas City these days, right? It's like, yeah, good win for KC, I guess. Good by New England to hang around, but I don't, it's not what it meant in years past.
No, it's not like they hung with the Chiefs while they were playing their A game or by any means. But I think maybe last week was more indicative of who the Broncos really are at the end of the day. Like they start out 1-5. They really get themselves off the mat. It's impressive. But, you pointed out to me a few weeks ago when I was really in on the Broncos. It's like, dude, they are just getting all these turnovers and not turning the ball over. Like that's not something that like is overly sustainable over the course of the season. And, that has come true. They're all of a sudden they don't get turnovers, and then they aren't winning games with that same regularity. They beat the Chargers a couple weeks ago. They blew it against the Texans, and then they got just totally boat raced by the Lions last week. I kind of view them as mirror images of each other as far as how in their respective conferences as far as how real they actually are. But maybe the Lions a little bit more real, obviously, after beating them. I can't trust Detroit with that many points. I think they're going to win this one by like 4 points. It's going to be a hideous game.
Okay. I think that's fair. I think Denver's not a team that tends to pull away, right? And that's what worries you with the spread that's like more than 3 with this team. And, we saw last week they're capable of getting blown out. The Patriots aren't blowing them out. I don't think we're too concerned about that. But I think Denver's totally content to win this game by a field goal and still, kind of control the game, right? Like when they went on that winning streak, it's not like they're decimating teams by any means. They were able to dictate style. They were able to play very, very conservatively, hit the 1 or 2 big plays to Cortland Sutton. Russell Wilson just like rolling out to the sideline, whipping it up there. Somehow Cortland Sutton brings it down. Feels like he was averaging one of those touchdowns per game. I think the Patriots defense does show up here. I mean, the game's in Denver. For what it's worth, it's somewhat of a tough place to play on the road, although it does feel like that mystique is kind of worn off over the last few years. So, yeah, I like Denver to win outright, but I think at 6 and certainly at 6.5, that might be a little too much. I think the Pats can hang around. Let's go to Raiders Chiefs. Just talked about the Chiefs. They beat the Pats last week. They are 10-point favorites over the Las Vegas Raiders. We noted earlier in the pod those teams that are coming off of a game in which they score 60 points, there's almost always a massive correction coming. I will say I don't love this number the way Kansas City's playing. They will get Pacheco back. That's big for the running game. Although Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I mean, one of the more athletic catches of the year from a guy who's been on the Mike Tolbert plan.
Yeah, that wasn't that unreal. I mean, like I'm annoyed at my fellow best ball compatriots that are getting rewarded for drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but that's besides the point. I would say overall, when it comes to the Chiefs here, it's in the elements. It's at home. I think that this is a really bad setup for the Raiders in general. And I think you tack on the fact that they just had the offensive eruption that was extremely out of character for them last week. I think that comes crashing back down. I think that the Chiefs defense keeps a lid on them. I think Aiden O'Connell makes some mistakes here. And I think that this is a trouble spot. We don't love 10, but the Chiefs were just able to cover that number against a better defense than what they'll be facing on Monday, and they're at home. So I think the Chiefs do it.
All right, I got to go do a welfare check on this dog that we're currently dog sitting. Long story short, so apologies to the live viewers, but I'll be back in like 30 seconds, and we'll of course clip this for the listening podcast audience.
Okay. All right. I'm going to filibuster. That's the word. For a few moments here as we get ready to wrap up the remainder of the podcast. But coming up next, I mean, we've got the Eagles and the Giants. The Eagles, we're looking at it right now. The Eagles are 13.5 point favorites in this one. Let's see where this one opened. Nick, I've moved us onward.
Okay, thank you. I heard that. I could hear you in my ears. I apologize again to the audience. Long story short, kind of had an emergency. Can you watch my dog? And couldn't really say no. And he's a good little pup. But yeah, I heard some like clanging around out there. I'm like, I don't know. We got to at least check on that. I think he's getting into the flower pots, but all is well on the dog front. Let's talk a little Giants Eagles. Let's do it.
Yes.
Giants are 12.5 point dogs for the Philadelphia Eagles. Should be a reasonable bounce back spot for Philly coming home, kind of emerging from that really difficult portion of schedule. I kind of feel like I've been an Eagles fan this season. Like I'm always defending Philly. I was on the Eagles on Monday night. I thought they would win that game. They did not. I understand, the concerns really on both sides of the ball now for this team, but Jalen Hurts wasn't 100%. Just hasn't really looked like himself the last few weeks, and we should probably mention that the Minnesota Vikings have a better point differential than the Eagles. That's not the best omen. Is 12.5 too much here?
Well, according to the live line at DraftKings, I mean, like I just refreshed the page over on RotoWire. It's 13.5 at DraftKings, so it keeps climbing in Philly's direction. So we're actually right now getting a point's worth of value with the Circa line relative to the live one. So that might be something to keep in mind. Public has probably never been lower on Philly than it is right now in the Sirianni era, in the Jalen Hurts era. Everyone's writing them off now as non-serious contenders. I do kind of agree with that, but I still think the Giants are terrible. So, yeah, give me the Eagles here. I don't know if it's card worthy to trust the Eagles with almost 2 touchdowns. I feel better about the Bills covering that big number and even the Chiefs. But if I'm picking a side here, and I know that that history says generally huge favorites don't cover this time of year. I think that the Eagles kind of need to make a statement and make themselves feel a little bit better.
I think the Eagles are getting away from, what ultimately set them out to a 10-1 record to begin the season. I know they actually had a pretty productive running game against Seattle the other night, but it felt to me a little bit like that Bills-Chiefs game 2 weeks ago where the Bills won, they got the result they wanted, but it was like as the game went on, it's like, why are you getting away from what's working, right? I thought Philly to me took some really unnecessary chances on third downs, 3rd and 4s, where all you got to do is you pick up 2 to 3 yards. You don't have to get the first down because you're getting it if you can get it into 4th and short. And Jalen Hurts is like chucking the ball downfield to try to hit a 45-yard touchdown to Devontae Smith. And you're like, what are you doing, man? Like, why are you making that decision in that spot? So, yeah, I think if Philly can just kind of regroup, like I said, they emerge from this really tough portion of the schedule. I mean, you got to play Dallas, KC, Buffalo, San Francisco, Dallas, and even Seattle at Seattle. That's not an easy game. That's about as tough of a 6-game run as it gets. I think they've probably been looking forward to the end of that portion. You finish out Giants, Cardinals, Giants. It's similar also to what we talked about with the Chiefs last week of like, all right, does this team have a statement game in them? Are they capable of that? I still say yes. I think that dominant Philly team is still in there. I don't look at them as like I do Kansas City and say, oh man, this version of that team that we still think of, they might be gone. Like, I think Philly could rediscover it.
I think so too. And the Giants is playing against the Giants at home is a great place to rediscover. That's some when we talk about self-discovery on this podcast, we usually talk about Aaron Rodgers, but no, Eagles soul searching this week against the Giants. It's happening.
All right, there we go. Eagles minus 12.5. That's the play, and that's the line at Circa. That brings us to your team, John, the Ravens. They get the Monday night Christmas night slot. You're opening some presents. You're with the family. You got the game on. Fireplace fired up. I mean, this is an ideal setting. Niners are 5.5-point home favorites. I love San Francisco here. I do. I'm a San Francisco guy, John. I think this number could be higher. I think it's the right number, but if it was 6.5, I would still take San Francisco. I think you got to give me a touchdown with the way this team is rolling right now.
Yeah, you got the fireplace rolling, the family all around. I'm cursing in front of my grandparents. This is going to be bad. I don't think that there's really any way for the Ravens to do this. I think if this really is a Super Bowl preview, I think it'll be a much closer game in February. But I don't know about the Ravens. Like they're the best team in the AFC right now, but I think the AFC is so wide open. I'd be scared of the Browns in the playoffs. I'd be scared of the Bills. It's not a dominant presence from Baltimore. I think that the defense can be great. I think the offense occasionally can be great. I think losing Keaton Mitchell is huge. I think that there's going to be a huge onus on Lamar Jackson as a runner this week as a result. And, you worry about Fred Warner and company like spying and whatever that San Fran defense is going to cook up to slow the rushing lanes there for Lamar, make him beat them as a passer. You don't have Mark Andrews anymore. Zay Flowers not at 100%. I don't think Odell Beckham was practicing today. This is just, it seems like there's just too many things working against Baltimore to get this done.
I think Baltimore's a great team. I don't think they're on the Niners level. And, if this game was in Baltimore, I think I'd feel a little bit differently. I mean, this is a tough travel spot for the Ravens, played late last week. And, like you said, these are the games where you miss Keaton Mitchell and Mark Andrews. Like you need to be at 100% to beat the 49ers and even hang with the 49ers in San Francisco for a Niners team that still has a lot to play for. Like they want to lock up that number 1 seed. And, a win here, I think would essentially seal it. I don't see them getting tripped up the rest of the way, but they need to hold off Dallas. They need to hold off Philly, and they're basically fully healthy, right? I mean, they've shown some leaks on defense. I think that Baltimore can exploit, but to what degree, right? Like we talked on the Circa video earlier today, and it's like what I always say about San Francisco is they could play their B game and still win because they're so talented. They can afford to have like Brandon Ayuk no show a game or Deebo Samuel no show a game. Sure. They're still probably going to win because they just have that much talent and they're that healthy. And Baltimore to me needs to go in and play like an A+ game all around, and the chances of doing that without Andrews and Keaton Mitchell to me are relatively low.
Basically, the only way that Baltimore does this is, what was the common theme when the Niners were looking mortal? Is Brock Purdy turning the ball over. If Purdy turns it over, the Ravens all of a sudden have a puncher's chance here. Sure. If Purdy plays the way that he has, Purdy, the prohibitive NFL MVP favorite right now. Mm-hmm. If he plays the way he has over the last, 4 or 5 games since the bye, the Niners are just indestructible, I think, at that point. And I think especially with them being at home, Ravens not at full speed or at full power as far as their personnel is concerned, the Niners can definitely win this one by a touchdown. So I like including this one on the card, emotional hedge to get me through my Christmas.
Love it. Yeah, it's the same case that I tried to make for the Buccaneers. Absolutely. Emotional hedge. Why not? 49ers, like you said, since the bye, 3 total turnovers. They forced 12 in that span. So +9 since the bye in terms of turnovers. And yeah, you're right. I mean, if the Ravens could get after Brock Purdy, if he throws a weird pick and they get a pick 6 or a sack fumble, like that's what it's going to take. And that's it. That's in the cards here. I do not want to try to undervalue the Ravens here. I'm just that high on San Francisco, man. So that might be a window into where I'm going with my best bet momentarily. Do we have a parlay of the week, John?
Ooh, let's see. We're gonna have kind of a vanilla one. We're gonna have to go with just 3 spreads. The Niners are on there. I think the Lions are my other team on there, and the Browns. So two roadies. I know 2 road favorites at that. But even still, that'll get you your classic about 6-1 odds. Okay. So nothing too spicy, but yes, again, to recap, Cleveland, Detroit, San Francisco, all against the spread.
Okay. I got a 4-legger for you this week. I'm taking the Buffalo Bills -12.5. I like that. I'm taking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers -2. I am, as of right now, betting that Trevor Lawrence is not playing. And again, even if he does, I think the Buccaneers can win that game. I'm taking the Chicago Bears money line. We're not touching the -4, but I think they win that game at home. And we're taking the Niners -5. That's where it sits right now at DraftKings. That one is at 5.5 in Circa. That gets you a little over 9-1.
Okay, we that's what we're searching for. We get a 9-1. I'm liking what you're cooking up there for Christmas.
Okay, that's what it's all about, man. It's the holiday season. We got to cook something up here. We're not doing a teaser this week. Didn't really love our options there. So we're skipping the teaser of the week. We've also just been terrible on the teasers. We need to take a week to just kind of refresh and flush our body out. Get back to that in week 17. But give me your lock of the week, John. Where are you going?
Cleveland. I know it on the road. Joe Flacco. It smells like a square pick, but you know what? I'm diving in. It's freaking Case Keenum on the other side in all likelihood. So. Barring some sort of miraculous Lazarus turn for CJ Stroud, I think the Browns get this done by a field goal or more.
Yeah, I don't think CJ baby Lazarus Stroud is coming back for this game. All the reporting has indicated that he's not. All right, so you're going with the Browns. Excuse me. For me, it's between the Bills and the Niners. But everything I just said about the Niners, I can't go against them. I got to ride with San Francisco. I am taking the Niners -5.5. All right, that'll do it for our NFL Week 16 betting preview. John, I know you got a busy holiday weekend ahead. I do as well. I got to go make sure this dog is not tearing up my home. So we will be on the run here. You can catch us. You can replay it on YouTube, RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Best of luck to everybody. If you're playing at the Circa contest, if you're just betting the NFL, if you're still alive in your fantasy leagues, have a great weekend. Have a great holiday. We will be back next Thursday.